Senator from North Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think all of us understand the gravity of moving forward on a CRA. It's not a usual procedure. It's limited in terms of filibuster rules, and it's extraordinary. And in this case, unfortunately, it's necessary. Had the previous administration actually listened and worked constructively with Senator Manchin and myself, and my utilities, and the coal industry in North Dakota, we would not be standing here now. This was a rule that had a specific intent of addressing mining practices in Appalachia. Yet, the former administration made the rule applicable to the entire country. I don't know that any of those folks drafting the rule had ever been to North Dakota to see just how different our mining practices and geology are compared to Appalachia. So I invited former Assistant Secretary Schneider out last year to take a look for herself. When she came out, she heard directly from North Dakota utilities, North Dakota regulators, and North Dakota coal companies. And she saw how our operations differ and how my state is a national leader in reclamation. Based on the final rule, it's apparent the rule was already baked before her visit. And the input of the folks back home in my state, quite honestly, was not taken seriously. North Dakota coal stakeholders estimate that the rule could cost coal producers in North Dakota alone approximately $50 million annually in additional compliance costs and take more than 600 million tons of otherwise mineable, affordable coal. And I will tell you, when you look at the landscape of North Dakota and you're sitting there and you're explaining this and you're showing how her rule would require equipment move, drag lanes move, and how all of that makes absolutely no sense in terms of the resource and in fact in terms of the difficulty of actually doing reclamation that needs to be done in that situation, when you're standing out there and you actually look at it, the only conclusion you can come to when you see the net result of this rule is it was intended to shut down coal mining. That's the only conclusion that I could come. It wasn't about clean air and clean water. It wasn't about protecting this resource. It was about shutting down a coal mine. So this impacts not only the ability of our utilities to access this affordable and abundant resource, it hits thriving rural communities throughout north-central North Dakota. Communities like Hazen, Washburn, and Beulah that rely on lignite coal for good-paying jobs, for funding our schools, for fire protection, for law enforcement, and other community resources that allow our rural communities and healthy middle class to thrive in the state of North Dakota. One-size-fits-all rules do not make any sense. And when you look at the application of this rule and one-size-fits-all, it clearly makes no sense. The beautiful mountains, forests, and streams that dominate the West Virginia landscape, as been described by my great friend Senator Manchin, are nothing like the rolling prairies, the buttes, and the prairie potholes of North Dakota. How anyone can look at these two states and think that a rule that's promulgated that will be universally applied can logically be applied to those two different landscapes, the logic of that completely escapes me. The rule that requires enhancement to the land, including trees and permanent fencing to keep livestock away from streams, well, in North Dakota, we're pragmatists. Not only do we return the land to the same or better condition, usually convert that land from farm or ranch land to this beautiful landscape you see. I want you to look at this. I want everyone to understand what reclamation looks like. I want you all to understand this used to be a strip mine. This used to be a big hole in the ground producing coal. And over generations and restoring this to the topography, the biggest challenge we have in North Dakota is convincing the original landowner, who would love it to be straight so it's easier to farm, that we have to put it back the way it was. You look at this landscape, and you can't tell me that the company that did this and the state that set the standards and the commitment that was made to reclamation was not honored, that it's not working in North Dakota, and we need a one-size-fits-all stream regulation to fix a problem that doesn't exist, a problem that's going to cost us $50 million and hundreds of jobs in my state. This is exactly why the people of this country get frustrated, and the people of this country do not understand why Washington, D.C. thinks that they know it all. So as a matter of fact, our reclamation programs are highly regarded, and we are, in fact, recognized for doing the best reclamation in the country. Yeah, I would point to the 2016 Abandoned Mine Land Reclamation Small Project Award that went to our mine reclamation project in Bowman, North Dakota. Our coal industry and our utilities are always willing to work with the federal government on regulations that focus on actual results, on improving environmental safety and standards. They're willing to do that again. They've never had an issue with updating this regulation. Never had an issue with updating this regulation. All they asked was that the former administration listen to them, to actually believe their eyes when they see the work that we're doing and understand the impact of that rule. It was done in haste, it was done hurriedly, and it was done so they could check a mark and say, see, we really are leave it in the ground. If you want to be leave it in the ground, then have the courage to come here and say that this country in the next 20 years will not extract one fossil fuel from the ground. Now, I have great respect for Senator Markey. He was just here talking about how we have made progress because of the conversion from coal mining to natural gas. It's a little disingenuous, I would say, because the whole while we're talking about this conversion would not have been made possible if it weren't for industry practicing of utilizing fracking to extract natural gas. This is a structured movement using bogus regulations to promote a national policy without having the courage to just advance that national policy forward, that policy objective, which is leave it in the ground. And you heard from Senator Manchin. I want everyone who says we're going to pursue a leave it in the ground national policy, I want them all to think about what that does to women and children who live on fixed incomes. I want you to think about what that means for reliable, redundant, and affordable power generation in our country. We are going to let the market decide. We have moved towards wind energy, which ironically, the big movement in wind energy was facilitated by a compromise we reached over a year ago that dealt with allowing for the export of crude oil out of this country, the lower 48, in exchange for more permanency for production tax credits and investment tax credits. We can, in fact, achieve a public policy result if we work together. And if we don't have hidden agendas like leave it in the ground. This rule was wrong. It was structured wrong. It attacks an industry that does this. And this is, I would tell you, I've been out there. I've worked in this industry, and I have been a regulator of this industry. This is not unique. This is what reclamation looks like in North Dakota. And to suggest that we have not been good stewards, to suggest that somehow we are contaminating this beautiful resource by what we're doing is wrong on so many levels. It's costly to our consumers, it costs us jobs, and is wrong on so many levels. And so with that, I would say, please, this is a process that should only be used very rarely, but I think is being used appropriately in this situation with the stream rule. And so I stand with my friend Joe Manchin in helping sponsor this CRA. We will continue to fight for our industry, fight for our good-paying jobs, and fight for common sense regulation that actually achieves the purpose of protecting this beautiful resource that we have in North Dakota. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.